Good evening, boys and girls. I have a story tonight called Uncle Jed's Barbershop, and it's written by Marguerite King Mitchell. Jedediah Johnson was my granddaddy's brother. Everybody has their favorite relative. Well, Uncle Jedediah was mine. He used to come by our house every Wednesday night with his clippers. He was the only black barber in the county. Daddy said that before Uncle Jed started cutting hair, he and Granddaddy used to have to go 30 miles to get a haircut. And that's a lot when you're on horseback. After Uncle Jed cut my daddy's hair, he lathered a short brush with soap and spread it over my daddy's face and shaved him. Then he started over on my granddaddy. I always asked Uncle Jed to cut my hair, but Mama wouldn't let him. So he'd run his clippers on the back of my neck and just pretend to cut my hair. He even spread lotion on my neck. I would smell wonderful all day. When he was done, he would pick me up and sit me in his lap and tell me about the barbershop he was going to open one day and about all the fancy equipment that would be in it. The sinks would be so shiny they'd sparkle. The floors would be clean so you could see yourself, and was going to have 4 barber chairs. And outside was going to be a big, tall, red and white barber pole. He told me he was saving up for it. He had been saying the same thing for years. Nobody believed him. People didn't have dreams like that in those days. We lived in the South. Most people were poor. My daddy owned a few acres of land, and so did a few others. But most people were sharecroppers. That meant they lived in a shack and worked somebody else's land in exchange for a share of the crop. When I was 5 years old, I got sick. This particular morning, I didn't come into the kitchen while Mama was fixing breakfast. Mama and Daddy couldn't wake me up. My nightgown and the bedclothes were all wet where I had sweated. If I was a mama, I'd be scared if that happened. Mama wrapped me in a blanket while Daddy went outside and hitched the horse to a wagon. We traveled about 20 miles into town to the hospital. It was midday when we got there. We had to go to the colored waiting room. In those days, they kept blacks and whites separate. There were separate public restrooms, separate water fountains, separate schools. It was called segregation. So in the hospital, we had to go to the colored waiting room. I'm so glad we don't have segregation nowadays. Even though I was unconscious, the doctors wouldn't look at me until they had finished with all the white patients. Then the doctors did examine me. They told my daddy I needed an operation and that it would cost $300. $300 was a lot of money in those days. My daddy didn't have that kind of money. and the doctors wouldn't do the operation until they had the money. Not like nowadays where they will take care of you no matter what. My mama bundled me back up in the blanket and they took me home. Mama held me in her arms all night. She kept me alive until Daddy found Uncle Jed. He found him early the next morning in the next county on his way to cut somebody's hair. Daddy told him about me. Uncle Jed leaned on his bent cane and stared straight ahead. He told Daddy that the money didn't matter. He couldn't let anything happen to his Sarah Jean. Well, I had the operation. For a long time after that, Uncle Jed came by the house every day to see how I was doing. I know that $300 delayed him from opening the barbershop. Uncle Jed came awfully close to opening his shop a few years after my operation. He had saved enough money to buy the land and to build the building, but he still needed money for the equipment. So wasn't that something? He gave the money so she could have the operation, even though he was saving for something else. He cared so much about his niece. No wonder he was her favorite. Anyway, Uncle Jed came by the house. We had just finished supper when there was a knock on the door. It was Mr. Ernest Walters, a friend of Uncle Jed's. He had come by to tell Uncle Jed about the bank failing. That was where Mr. Walters and Uncle Jed had their money. Uncle Jed had over $3,000 in the bank, and it was gone. Uncle Jed just stood there a long time before he said anything. Then he told Mr. Walters that even though he was disappointed, he would just have to start over again. Talk about some hard times. That was the beginning of the Great Depression. Nobody had much money. Yeah, I have family that lived through the Depression, and it was not easy. It was not fun. Very difficult time. When they say the bank failed, the bank didn't have enough money, and when people came going, I want my money, they didn't have enough for everybody. And so if you didn't get your money first, gone. Isn't that sad? But Uncle Jed kept going around to his customers, cutting their hair, even though they couldn't pay him. His customers shared with him whatever they had, a hot meal, fresh eggs, vegetables from the garden. And when they weren't able to pay again, and when they were able to pay again, they did. And Uncle Jed started saving all over again. Now, $3,000 today seems like a lot of money. Back then, that would have been a huge sum of money. And he started again. Old Uncle Jed finally got his barbershop. He opened it on his 79th birthday. It had everything just like he said it would. Big, comfortable chairs, 4 cutting stations, you name it. The floors were so clean they sparkled. On opening day, people came from all over the country. They were old Uncle Jed's customers. He had walked to see them for so many years. That day, they all came to him. On his 79th birthday. So he was working on that a long time. I believe he cut hair all night and all the next day, and the next night, and the day after that. The man was so glad to have that shop, he didn't need any sleep. Of course, I was there too, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. When I sat in one of the big barber chairs, Uncle Jed patted the back of my neck with lotion, just like he always did. Then he twirled me around and around in the barber chair. So look, she's all grown up. She's not a little girl anymore. Uncle Jed died not long after that. I think he died a happy man. You see, he made his dream come true even when nobody else believed it. He taught me to dream too. Okay, nice story. So I hope that if you have a dream of something you want to do or somewhere you want to go, that you never give up. Be like Uncle Jed and just keep after your dream no matter how long it takes so that you can do it. Okay, that's it for tonight. Good night, sleep tight, happy dreams.